Hello everyone, my name is Laurie and I am a former Shincheonji member and leader that attended the church for about 7 years. During that time I held various positions or duties. I had the duty of BB teacher, supervisor, head supervisor, evangelism department leader, instructor and eventually regional head instructor. So during my time in Shincheonji, I was continuously told how important it is to study Korean, and I was told as well that many of the people on this channel are Korean. But I won't surprise you by speaking Korean fluently because I never really studied it properly while in SEJ. I was always making excuses. I don't really like studying other languages. So I'm not going to surprise you by speaking in Korean today for those that are listening. Perhaps there will be some kind of translation added to this video. I hope that you enjoy it. I was evangelized by a very good friend of mine that attended a church together with me, and we were actually both leaders in an Assemblies of God Pentecostal church. Before Shincheonji, we were very close, and I was actually in love with her. And I told her while she was in center, while she was being evangelized, I told her that I was in love with her and I wanted to get married to her. Of course, she was really freaked out because she thought, perhaps this is the devil using him to get me away from the word or something like that. And she eventually managed to evangelize me. I was always someone that was very knowledgeable in the Bible, and it's very difficult to convince me of something. But they did manage eventually. Perhaps I was at a vulnerable time in my life. However, when I attended center, I was really convinced by the doctrine. Even already when I did Bogambang, when I did BB, the one-on-ones, I already started realizing that the way that they teach the Bible was very unique. It made a lot more sense to me than the church that I attended. I was looking for purpose, I was looking for a deeper understanding of the Bible, and I felt that I found it. It was already before I went to center, while I was in BB, I already started realizing that it's the second coming. But at the beginning, I thought it was like the world is literally physically going to end soon. So I already started selling some of my stuff, and I spent so much money on just random stuff I didn't need because I felt like I just want to enjoy my life before it's the end of the world. So I would spend thousands of rands just on random luxuries like food and stuff like that. That's very expensive. But I thought, if I'm going to die soon, it's the end of the world, I might as well just, enjoy myself. But of course, later I realized that it's spiritual. So I regretted spending all of that money. But I was really sincerely convinced that it's the truth. Based on the Bible, it made a lot of logical sense to me. I did do a lot of research, even though they told us not to look on the internet. I did. I even found Mani Lee. But I didn't really do anything to me. The teaching that they gave was very clear to me. There were some questions that I had after Passover, but after I read Mani Lee's creation book and revelation book, everything made sense to me and I was fully convinced. And I didn't have any doubts for a very, very long time. I was absolutely, fully, sincerely convinced. Of course, there is many things that happened in SEJ that hurt me emotionally to some extent. These things kind of confused me a bit, but it never made me doubt. It never led to me wanting to leave. I never even considered it, even though I experienced many things that hurt me. I was always the type of person, if something happened that was unethical or something that I felt hurt by, I would say, but it's simply people making mistakes. It has nothing to do with whether this is all true or not. So I was a very firm believer in that, and I still am. I didn't leave because of emotional reasons. I have many things that I could share, but I find them to be irrelevant because I left because I actually care about what's true, regardless of how it makes anyone feel. So what happened with me in my 5th year in Shincheonji, there was a leader in the tribe that I was in that suggested that we do some research and that we develop some material for non-religious people that struggle to believe in God, that we can essentially make them religious, make them Christians, make them believe in the Bible, and also eventually evangelize them to Shincheonji. And also, of course, to consult people with unbeliever tendencies inside of the church. So during that time, I started researching and I took it very, very seriously. I was actually rather excited because I was someone that studied some apologetics before I joined Shincheonji, some Christian apologetics. And now I finally had a time to do it again. I asked the Philiptribe headquarters to send me their internal BB material that also had a lot of unbelievers education. The first thing I picked up was most of their information was not actually based on science. It was mostly based on what we would call pseudoscience. And so I thought it was very weak arguments, and it just demonstrated that they didn't really understand science. But this didn't shake me at all, because I didn't expect SCJ people to necessarily understand science. And I myself also didn't really have a good understanding of science back then. But I really realized there's some, the arguments are quite weak. So I was resolved to do my own research and to essentially, develop very good material. The first thing that I did is I studied critical thinking, and I learned about how we as people are very biased and how we need to be skeptical of ourselves and the people around us, how we are easily irrational, how we are self-centered and group-centered, how we are biased in the way that we think. And I also learned about logic and logical fallacies, and I studied some philosophy, and I studied science. I looked at various arguments for and against God's existence and the nature of God and different religions. I studied various topics. And over time, what happened is I was no longer convinced of the God of the Bible and the Bible as well. I hope this doesn't offend any of you. I know that most of you on this channel are still religious and Christian. So I won't expand on it as not to offend you too much. But of course, I had issues with SCJ's doctrine as well. Like, for example, Revelation 7, that clearly changed. I don't understand how someone can't acknowledge that. And this is something that even now, there's still people in SCJ that are constantly asking about Revelation 7. And the answers that they're getting are simply character attacks, not actual responses to their questions. When they ask questions, they're told not to judge God and not to see things from their own perspective, but from God's perspective. But then that perspective is not explained. It's extremely confusing, and then people are told that they're arrogant, they need to repent, and it's their sinful nature that is blinding them and making them make false judgment and silly things like that. It's ultimately just shifting it back upon the person and make them seem like there's something wrong with them. And as a result of that, something wrong with them, they can't understand it. This is, of course, a simple evasion of the question and not an actual explanation. My questions that I had when I left wasn't really that much based on the Bible. It was more based on scientific concepts, which SCJ people can't answer, because the majority of them are completely scientifically illiterate. So that's fundamentally the reason why I left. But I also have issues with their doctrine, and I have issues with the way in which they function as an organization. And I think that they are psychologically harming a lot of people. The evidence of that are the people that are leaving and, what's happening in their lives. And there's also a lot of people inside of ACJ that have struggled a lot psychologically. And one of the problems that I have, because I have a great deal of respect for psychology, I have a problem when there are people that experience mental health problems in Shincheonji, and then the leaders pretend as if they're some kind of psychologist and they have the competency to help these people, which they clearly don't. And this is something that I find to be grossly immoral, and it's something that I will always criticize. I don't think such people should be respected, nor do I think their beliefs should be respected. I understand that everyone has the right to their own perspectives, but there are certain things that are objectively harmful to other human beings, and I actually care about human beings. And I'm not going to, harm people out of my obedience to some kind of supernatural entity that I can't even demonstrate to exist. Now, I left Shincheonji more than 1 year ago, and just to kind of give you some background information, after I stopped believing, I stayed in Shincheonji for more than a year. I can't remember exactly how long, since my deconversion process was a process. It took time, so I can't specifically point out to you this specific day I stopped believing. But while I was in SCJ, because I stopped believing in most religious claims, I studied a lot about ethics. I wanted to make sure that I can still live a good and ethical life. So I studied a lot of ethics, and I made sure that I know how to live a good life, an ethical life that doesn't harm people unnecessarily and maximizes the well-being of the people that I love. And I also studied a lot about, human identity, made sure that I understand myself and that I identify my values and my beliefs, and that I make meaningful life goals for myself that I can pursue. Me and my sister that left together, we also started making plans on where we will stay and making sure we have transportation, we have finances, that we can get a job. We already started reaching out to family and these types of things. We didn't really tell them that much. They wouldn't really understand. So we just shared with them minimal information. We did share with them progressively over time a bit more. Actually, many of them, it's quite a funny story. When we left Shincheonji and we started building a relationship with them, we found out that most of them actually knew we were in Shincheonji all along. We just never knew it. So our wisdom, it never worked. Either way, after Shincheonji, life was rather difficult at the beginning. But after that, it became much, much better. Of course, for me, as someone that stopped believing as a regional head instructor for more than a year, it's very difficult to pretend. And also to look people in the eye knowing that they're deceived. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make a big scene. I was afraid that people would label me as a persecutor and someone that poisons people. So I didn't want to, convince anyone to leave with me necessarily. I was afraid. I wanted to maintain relationships, but unfortunately, when I left, people just suddenly blocked me and they didn't speak to me anymore. That was rather difficult for me. I was rather lonely. I did have a lot of people outside of SCJ that was very supportive, but they didn't really understand what I went through. So even though I was surrounded by a lot of people, I still felt a bit lonely. I think the people that helped me the most were ex-SCJ members. There's a level of empathy and sympathy that you can experience from them that you can't really experience from others. So that was really nice. And I started focusing a lot on making sure that I surround myself with people that accept me for who I am, and people that I can be honest with, that I can build trust with again. I focused on being a person of integrity, say what I mean and I mean what I say, and I do the things that I say I believe. I practice what I preach, essentially, and that I hold other people to the same standards to which I hold to myself. And also I try to have the courage to speak my mind and to be open and honest, things that I couldn't really do in SCJ for a long time. And I surround myself with people that support me and help me to become the best version of myself, that don't constantly degrade my character by instilling shame and guilt inside of me. And I've created a lot of meaningful life goals that I'm pursuing. Things like developing knowledge and trying to figure out the way that the world works and sharing information with people, having insightful discussions and debates with people of various perspectives. One of the things now as well, of course, in Shincheonji, your only friends are Shincheonji members. I have a very wide, different types of friends now. I have friends that are from different religions, those that are religious, those that are secular. I have friends that are homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, pansexual. I have different types of, people that are black and brown skin color, white skin color, different types, interracial couples. I'm friends with them as well. Any type of person that I can have an honest and insightful discussion with, I will ultimately befriend. Most of my close friends currently are ex-SCJ members, but I have many friends and I'm open to more experiences. I try to explore the world. I try to ultimately every single day be kind to people. A lot of the stuff that I learned in SCJ, perhaps I've sometimes learned bad things as well, but there are many good things that I also took from it that I find very useful in my life about, how people work and these types of things. So ultimately everything worked out great for me at the end. And the proudest moment of my life is the day that I decided to stand up for what's true and to have the courage to do the right thing and leave Shincheonji. I did not feel this for the first couple of months. I was afraid that I could have made the wrong decision. I knew that it wasn't true, but I still felt like maybe I should have stayed a bit longer and perhaps I could have seen the people that I love a bit more. But at the end of the day, I realized I'm not willing to sacrifice my identity for other people. And I have this one life that I have to live. And there is a saying, carpe diem, which means seize the moment. Live in the moment and enjoy the small things in life and make your life spectacular. Thank you very much.